Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann.
And I'm number one fan Tim.
Oh, are you going to be on the hot seat?
Why?
I've noticed over the last 2 years that you have gotten progressively less moderate by a lot politically.
Maybe.
Every time the Democrats do anything, you lose your shit. Anytime you bring up liberals, you're saying something negative. And once upon a time ago, I was trying to tell you about Dave Chappelle and his comedy specials on Netflix. And you're like, I don't really know much about Dave Chappelle. Now, Dave Chappelle has won Emmy Awards. He's literally the funniest comedian alive today and the most poignant. And then I played for you his 2016 kind of politically charged monologue on SNL, and we got into it. And even though he was landing some good zingers in there, you focused on the fact that he dropped the N-word and that SNL is a liberal show or a show full of liberals that skews the right too much, and how they complain about political correctness, but yet on a liberal show, Dave Chappelle's dropping the N-word, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, you're missing the point. Laugh at the jokes. And I kind of feel like they talk about Trump derangement syndrome, where anything that has to do with Trump, somebody immediately rages out if they don't like him.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Okay, you have liberal derangement syndrome.
Only when they're being hypocrites. And it's the same for if Republicans are being hypocrites.
But I never hear you say any negative shit about the right.
You don't usually talk about the right.
Well, they're an easy target. It's almost not even worth trying. Backtrack to the beginning of the episode and the way I originally approached it.
Okay.
Is that anything that has to do with liberals, it seems to be you're stuck on that liberal card. Or you're stuck on that left card. How can you politicize a comedian's monologue on SNL?
I didn't think it was funny. Because the hypocrisy, again.
What's the hypocrisy?
He's on a, politically correct, can't use the N-word, it's a bad word, yet there's a comedian up there dropping it constantly.
Well, I think
when we first discussed this, it's okay. Either the N-word's a bad word and nobody uses it, or it's okay, it doesn't matter, it's just a word, and anybody can use it. And my personal thoughts on it were, it's a disgusting word, nobody should use it.
Oh, but he's not using it for hate speech,
He's just hate speech or not. And like when I hear those rap videos, or I see movies just like Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
I know Marcellus Wallace was calling out to Bruce Willis's character, "Yo, brother, my nigga." It's like, why? Can't you say, "Hey, my brother," or "Hey, my friend," or I don't get it.
Well, that's a movie.
It still happens in real life.
Art imitates life. The whole takeaway
So then why would you say it's a movie?
Because it's just a movie. Just like Dave Chappelle using the word as a black comedian, as the black comedian, and really overall the comedian. He can fucking say whatever he wants. That's just a fact right there, is no one's going to silence him.
I thought he was funny back in the day. What you showed me so far, I didn't find it very funny. But not a lot of comedians are making me laugh nowadays.
Oh, he's light years funnier than he ever was years ago.
Maybe if I watched the whole special, because I know every special, there's parts that's like, and there's parts like, not so good.
Oh, not with him. He fucking murders it.
Like even Bill Burr, like there's some parts of Bill Burr's bits that are like, that's hilarious, and other parts like, That's every comedian, anybody that I've listened to.
But I found it strange that I was trying to have you listen to some of the shit that he said, just to give you more an idea of how Dave Chappelle is now. But then it became a political issue for you.
Oh, well, again.
And then it was, SNL's always skewering the right, and this is a left-wing liberal show, and they're PC, and they don't want to hear these words, but they're letting him get away with these words.
Yeah, maybe I turned into political a little bit there, but did I or did I not have a point?
I didn't think so. I was kind of like, what the fuck just happened? I was literally floored, like, what the fuck? Where's the hidden camera? I go to show him Dave Chappelle. I don't know anybody that doesn't like Dave Chappelle, and you're like, oh my God, he used the N-word, and these damn liberals on this show, they want us to be PC and not use that word and say it's a hateful word, but they let him use it. I'm like,
you're making it sound worse than it actually was.
Stand-up. But... It was not. I'm not. I'm so fucking not.
Maybe I'll go back and listen to the episode and see how I sounded. But
it's his 2016 hosting gig, and it's his opening monologue.
Was it that long ago already?
Yes, because it's funny. He was interviewed later, and he's like, man, if I now could go back in time and talk to myself that night when I was saying that I think we should give Trump a chance, I would tell myself to shut the fuck up. Like, well, yeah, hindsight's 20/20.
As always, yeah.
Who is someone in the comedy world who you really like?
Bill Burr's pretty funny.
Besides the, top tenors.
Oh.
Anybody.
Christ, I can't remember some of their names.
Well, how do you feel about comedy
Mitch
and politics?
Fatel. I've heard him on... Mitch Fatel... I've heard him on Pandora a bunch of times. His stand-up is great. There's another one. God, I'd have to...
Well, it's not so much a list of favorites as it is a question of standard now.
Okay.
So if you saw a gay comedian and he was using the word faggot, how do you feel about that?
I don't really see the need to use word faggot.
Well, because Dave Chappelle using the N-word bothered you, and then it is somehow
kind of the
tied
same.
into the left.
It's just, is faggot as offensive of a word as the N-word? I mean, to some, yes, but
depends on whose ox
is
is
it
being
widely disliked as the N-word is? Or is it as much controversy as the N-word is? Because honestly, I mean, I don't get to use the use of terms like that. Well, I can kind of see the point in the movie, although it doesn't mean I liked it. In the movie American Beauty, the father is...
Okay, so here we go. Here's a comedian. He's telling a joke. He's telling a story about him and some guy he was dating. And the punchline to the joke is he looks at the other guy for doing something effeminate and goes, why are you acting like such a faggot? How do you feel?
I don't find it very funny.
If he does it on SNL, does it make it worse?
No.
But Dave Chappelle using the N-word on SNL...
That was just pointing out the hypocrisy of NSL. It didn't say it made it worse.
No, I know, but I'm trying to see some uniformity in the standard across the board. Because if a woman goes on the air and uses the word cunt, does that bother you?
No, because I use it sometimes too.
Right.
It's like that's like the maximum level of bitchiness you can be. I know a lot of people don't like it. I remember I said it one time to my buddy's wife, and I wasn't calling her that. I just used it in front of her. And she got mad at me. I'm like, what? Again, is cunt as hated? I mean, I don't hear much about it.
Well, I'm trying to see how that one instance, and when I say it's become worse over time, and I feel like I need to get a fucking tally board to keep track, is there was a point in time where I had to put my foot down and say, enough with the goddamn Tide Pod jokes out of you, old man. And
me?
then yes, you. You remember I did that? I said, no more Tide Pod jokes. It's worn out, it's welcome.
What Tide Pod jokes was I making?
You're talking about dumb kids and, these are the same kids that are eating Tide Pods? You sounded like a fucking old man. So I said, no more Tide Pod jokes.
That's
Find some new
I saw
material.
A bunch of them on Facebook, I guess.
Now, this was over the span of many months when it was beyond its freshness date. So then again with the, how many times you said, I really believe liberalism is a mental disorder, or do you think it's possible...
The extreme, yeah.
...that liberalism... is a mental illness. It's many variations of the same comment, but it seems to always be towards liberals.
Well, as I said before, I'm libertarian, which is in the middle, but I do have right leanings in social stuff. Like, I have no problem with people getting an abortion. Okay? That's your right. Mm-hmm. It's also my right to get a gun. You know, it is your right to dye your hair pink and dress like a girl when you're a guy. That's your right. It doesn't affect me.
But the fact that the liberalism statements come out so often when we're discussing politics, I'm trying to cause you to examine the way that you see politically charged stories. And I try to not always... I will sometimes say the loony left as a gag, but I don't ride that line hard, and I'm not looking to die on that hill. Just like... the conservative right and saying, they're a bunch of racist old white rich people. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to kind of put you under the microscope on this one to see if maybe it gives you food for thought why every issue isn't always black or white or left or right or on this side of one line or the other. And how something as innocent as, hey, watch this monologue and tell me if you think it's funny.
And I told you it wasn't funny, and I told you why I didn't find it funny.
Oh, we're going to watch it again right now. Hang on.
A few moments later.
So now we've gone and rewatched it some year and a half later since you last saw it.
God, I feel like it hasn't been that long.
But it has. Some of those jokes still land pretty hard, even though they were 4 years ago. And your takeaway now is, was it more enjoyable?
It was slightly more enjoyable. Still don't think the N-word was necessary in it. But it was more enjoyable this time around.
Okay, so would you be equally as upset with his usage of the N-word if he had been in a historically conservative program?
Yeah, I don't really like the N-word. That's pretty much it.
Okay. So you were able to watch it with me having told you how you responded to it last time, so you could approach it differently this time.
I remember how I approached it last time. I don't think we were more than a few minutes in, and I was already just like, I don't want to hear this.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hear it.
Well, the point of me bringing up the liberalism shtick here is just because I wanted to point out what I see as a perceived bias and give you opportunities for reflection and see if discussing it, if you would go, holy shit, I do that? Or, no, I don't think I do it that much. Or who fucking cares if I do that? I don't know. You haven't really given the answer yet.
It felt like I had always kind of been that way, but how long have we been doing this podcast now?
Well, I've been doing this show for almost 5 years. You've been doing it with me for probably 3.
Okay.
Consistently, if not 3.5.
Yeah, I don't think it was that long after you started it that I was kind of brought in, so.
Yeah.
So I actually felt like I was always kind of at the same level, but seeing it from someone else's perspective, you being the outside observer, saying, well, it wasn't this way at first, but it's kind of getting increasing. It's like, okay, I could see that as being valid. So maybe what I think I'll do in future is try to look a little less through political spectrum. And it depends on what we're talking about. Like when you bring me in and we're going to start talking about riots in Minneapolis over George Floyd, it's a politically driven thing in many regards, but I looked at it as a policing issue. Did they have to do that? No, they didn't. Honestly, they didn't. Even when they released body cam footage, it still wasn't necessary for them to do what they did.
Right.
So it doesn't excuse them, and that's how I honestly looked at the whole situation. But yeah, I was a little bit of a tangent on, well, they're acting this way, they're acting that way probably because of the area that they're in, or
the city council is
the mindset
very
of some
democratic.
Well, that too. I mean, but it's just like, and not just the George Floyd thing, but in everything that we talk about where it just does get brought up. I mean, there's going to be extremes in both parties. I don't like the far extreme right. I don't like the Bible bangers, the racists that are there, because there's racists on the left too. I mean, there's a whole boatload of Joe Biden quotes that can be looked at as, holy shit, that's racist.
Yeah.
Especially some of the policies he co-signed and stuff back in the early 70s.
Oh, yeah. All the prison reforms that seem to heavily
over-incarcerate
and over-punish people of color.
The whole school thing, too, the segregation of schools. He was actually against desegregating the schools.
And so far back, I haven't even looked at his record because he wasn't a blip on my radar because he was just a creepy guy that smelled people's hair and probably has dementia.
Yeah. And bites people's fingers when they put him in front of him.
So this whole concept of this episode is about having you look at that bias and how it fits into the larger scheme here is now the country's never been more divided. It's like everybody has to be on one side of a line or another if you go by how the media portrays it. And we've got 2 options, unfortunately, is all we get in this election. And one seems like a fucking spoiled child who's operating off ego, and the other one is trying to be uber professional while slightly losing his shit and engaging in almost similar behavior on the debate dais. Everybody needs to examine where their biases fall. So what I want people to think about now going into this election is, are you voting for the left because you've always voted for the left? Are you voting for the right because you've always voted for the right? Are you voting for these 2 candidates because you feel like they don't give us any other options even though they are there? I mean, it just kind of ties into Look at what you believe. How many black people think all white people are racist? How many white people think that all black people are criminals? All this shit. We really need to sit down and stop fighting and examine how our beliefs may have gotten more extreme over time and out of hand, and maybe rein that shit in a little and do some reflection and try to be better people to everyone so that we can put out this metaphorical societal fire that we have got going on right now at unbelievable pace. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It? That is at What Do We Call It? You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann.
And I'm number one fan Tim.
And that's the end.